Be a cheater, be disrespectful. Do not be accountable to your partner. Ensure that she's insecure. That's exactly what this guy is implying men do. That's what he's saying in this video, and that's what he's trying to convince people to get behind. Okay, welcome to Reactions with Ojei. I'm your host, Ojei. And I'm super excited to do this today. Shout out to our producer, SK, who has taken out the time to find these videos. He has searched the entire internet. He has managed to, I don't have any other metaphor to explain the amount of work he puts into getting these videos. But SK, I appreciate you. And hopefully you guys will appreciate him as well after we react to these videos. So without further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to share my 2 cents on what I think on the things that are going on in the world. These videos that are currently flying across the internet. And that's it. Let's get stuck in.
The cold truth that you have to accept as a man dating is that women punish loyal men who want them. If you're loyal, if you're oftentimes very caring, if you're oftentimes very nice, if you're oftentimes always there for her, and on top of that, if she knows exactly where you stand with her, she is going to like you less, she's going to think you have no options, she's going to oftentimes disrespect you, and then she'll oftentimes pull away and leave you, or
you see, my problem with this thing is that these men actually have a following. I'm here shouting that men don't have a voice. And then you come across people like this.
You'll go and sleep with somebody else. Now, as uncomfortable as that truth actually is, what you have to understand is this is just the way the world is. This is Mother Nature. This is how relationships go. The sooner you can just accept it, the better off you'll be. And on top of that, then you actually know what not to do so you can actually change your behavior. Click the link in my bio to join the biggest movement on planet Earth where men are coming together to actually master the dating game.
My first question is, so what's the alternative? Be a cheater, be disrespectful. Do not be accountable to your partner. Ensure that she's insecure. And I'm so confused. So the solution to the problem is to embody everything that is bad in a relationship. I mean, I have yet to meet any woman who is attracted to any of those traits I just listed. And that is exactly what this guy is implying men do. That's what he's saying in this video, and that's what he's trying to convince people to get behind. I think people confuse being strong with being rude, and they tend to lose their way in the pursuit of some of these things. Women in general choose men who are adventurous and able. And the main indicators of attraction are competence and confidence. But that's not the same thing as being a disrespectful cheater. You have to be able to separate both of them. They're really not the same. You can be a confident man without taking a dump on your partner's self-esteem. So when I see guys like this that come on the internet, I just honestly can't take them seriously, man. There's a conversation to be had, and again, don't get me wrong. Like, there's actually a conversation to be had about being too nice, but we also have to understand that most of the time, being nice, like being too nice, anyways, is actually a form of deflecting from you saying the truth. You're actually doing your best as a man not to say what you know to be true because you want people to like you. And so that in of itself is a problem. But the solution to being too nice is not to go to the extreme and then become rude and embody some dark personality. I mean, women aren't attracted to that. And if you were with a partner that you were rude to, you didn't treat properly, you cheated on, you made feel insecure, and she was still attracted to you, as a man, shouldn't you be worried? It doesn't sound to me like you actually want the best for your partner. Because you're abusing her. In that situation, you'd be abusing her, and then you would expect that she would still be attracted to you. For me, that's the only solution he's offering here, right? Because he's saying essentially women aren't attracted to men who make them feel secure. That's what he's implying. So, I don't even know, man. I don't even know where they find these people, honestly.
So this is one of the most common traps that I see guys fall into, and it's dating a girl who is in her toxic feminine. And by the way,
what does it mean by toxic feminine? What is that? What's that?
A lot of guys don't even know what a woman looks like in her toxic feminine. So this is an example of what that looks like.
Let's go
So a woman in her toxic feminine is going to have this energy where in the beginning, she is super attractive, funny, fun, engaging. There's just something about her that really pulls you in. But there is a point at which...
There's always a but. Always a but.
Things will...
I'm joking.
Start to shift. And she's going to take her energy and almost hold it over top of you and start making everything about her and start pushing you to kind of, in a way, like suck up to her and make her the most important thing. And you are, in a way, beneath her. So obviously, this is not a equitable, fair, loving, caring, equal relationship. This is a relationship where she is up here and she's down here, and she keeps you there out of a mode of control.
Okay, so what he's describing sounds a lot like what Robert Greene would call the spectacular siren. So she calls you in a bid to gain control and manipulate you. And sounds a bit similar to what he's alluding to here. I think I agree that there are people, men and women, who have this particular trait. They're not really looking for a loving, equitable relationship. They're just there because they want to control and manipulate. But what I found more often than not in the case of men is in situations where this eventually develops, it is because the man is usually weak or insecure. And so here's what I mean by this. For your partner, right, for you to get to the point where your partner has quote unquote forced your hand into placing them at a level that is above you, you also have to sort of accept that. You also have to sort of believe it is true, right? So whether it is the inability of the man himself to be able to speak up and say, I don't agree with the way you're behaving. And usually those patterns are clear in the beginning. You can sort of see them. But again, with those type of men, it is because they are comfortable with they're not really comfortable, but they just sort of can't believe their luck at the fact that they have been able to land someone like this. And so in their minds, they've already placed the person on a pedestal. So when the person starts to act like that, they sort of embody the attitude of, I think I deserve this. So that's usually what's going on there.
So the trap that I see guys fall into is they date this type of girl and they get really hooked on her because of how awesome she may seem in the beginning, but then she flicks that switch, and immediately it becomes not so fun. But they're in it so deep, like they are invested in this thing. They are hooked. They want more. It's almost
Yeah.
like an addiction, and that's when she knows she's got you. So then she's able to basically do whatever she wants, and this forces a lot of guys to just fall into their feminine energy.
I think again, so this is part of what he's alluding to. She's able to do whatever she wants, at least in that relationship, and I think he's coming from a place of the relationship is toxic, so she's able to abuse the man because he allows her to abuse him. Let's be clear on this. A guy who is strong and knows his worth and his value will not be in a relationship where he's not loved, respected, and respected. So the moment he feels like he's giving too much, or the moment he feels like he is not getting what is required for his standard, he will check out. Right. And again, there are a lot of men with false confidence who display these attributes I've just listed out. But it's no different from men who are truly confident. If they're in a relationship that is abusive, right, to a fault, then they will check out. So the people that, in my opinion at least, allow themselves to continue in this situation is because they truly are weak. They can't see themselves as anybody better, right? So there's no justification for it. They're like, what are the odds I find someone that is going to love me for who I am? Or what are the odds that I find someone who is going to be as beautiful as this person or as intelligent as this person? So they're sort of insecure themselves, and so they allow it to continue.
Where they're basically sucking up to her and trying to make everything okay with her. All the focus is put on her. You actually end up letting yourself down because you do not put your own needs before hers. So because of this, it's really important to know, is the girl I'm dating in her healthy feminine or is it toxic? And if it's toxic,
Why does he keep on calling it healthy, like feminine? Why, like healthy feminine, toxic feminine? Like, why is he calling it that? I don't know. I just feel like the generalization is just putting me off. Like healthy feminine, toxic feminine.
there is some work that needs to be done.
People really be making up words these days. But I understand what he's saying. I understand what he's saying. There's a point that he's trying to make, which I sort of understand. And I don't totally disagree with him. But again, I don't think the prerogative is on those women. We can have a conversation about them being terrible people. And obviously, they are controlling, yes, but the people who are in that position also have the power to get themselves out of it. So if you don't get out of it, it's because you either don't want to be out of it, you don't feel like there's anything better for you to aim for, which by extension means you're not strong enough to get out of it. So probably weak and insecure, right? So that's how I place that.
I really feel like we don't speak about this enough is people don't realize how often men are experiencing a lack of intimacy. And the only place that they can experience that intimacy is through sex. We've created a society where men are so afraid to be vulnerable with each other, to be, sensitive with each other, to care for each other, to love each other. I hope we get to the place where guys go, oh, I actually didn't need the sex. I needed to be held. And I live in a society where it's hard to be held unless I'm having sex. Because as guys, you can't just go to a guy and be like, just hold me. There are many sex workers who've talked about this, where they'll talk about how many men will pay them and then say, hey, can we just talk? Can we just sit on the bed and talk? And can you just hold me?
Oh my God, I agree with him. I agree with him so much. This is why I like Trevor. I don't know is my South African accent any good? Trevor. But this is what, anyways, this is why I like him. I think he's really, really intelligent. At least with this point of view, I really, really agree. Society is oriented to prioritize the strength of men and the voice of women. And I know there's a misandrist out there that's watching this video right now and is getting offended, rolling her eyes and giving me, the looks, thinking, whose fault is that? I can feel the hate. I know. Calm down. As you're laughing in patriarchy, breathe. I get it. But again, that's not the point. We need to understand that our communities are built on systems that have reinforced the characters of both men and women. And so that's why men have a violent tone while groping in the dark in search of a voice. Don't get it twisted. A violent tone and a voice are not the same thing. A voice is the ability to speak clearly, to articulate your thoughts and your feelings without allowing anger filter into that. I think a lot of men speak from a place of pain. And that is something that is not really reckoned with. A voice serves as an outlet for emotions. And you can only do that when you're given the room to be expressive. Boys are being raised in an environment that prioritizes their brute strength over their tongue. And this culture is being reinforced when loud women, and I'm not generalizing and saying all women. I genuinely believe that the vast majority of the negative things we see are by the people who are extremely loud. And so we tend to assume that because they are loud, they're speaking for everyone. But bear with me. I genuinely believe that the opinions of some of these loud women and their inclination to associate brute force and provision with masculinity is part of the problem. And then it's not helped anyways by men as well, who consider the same thing and think, okay, what they're saying is right. So you have the boys who are told, your place as a man is to be able to provide, which is good, which is true. I agree. You have to be able to provide. I believe in that ethos, but it's not the only thing. It's not what defines your masculinity. It's not the start and end of your masculinity. And so men are defined by that box and they try and fit into it, and it's very difficult when you try and break the mold. It's as if people question, what are you doing? It's sort of like an iconoclast. Like, so what are you doing talking about your feelings? It's weird. Men don't want to talk about it. They can relate to it, but they don't have the emotional intelligence to actually respond appropriately. And then women can't understand it. At least most women can't understand it, right? So all they can really offer you is sympathy. At the end of the day, you're just stuck having no one to talk to but yourself, and you're dealing with these things. And that's why I say men don't have a voice. What we hear from men more often than not is a cry of pain. It's very, very different from being able to articulate your thoughts properly. And society is not oriented to give men that. But no one wants to talk about that. We're not even allowed to say that. If you say it, the first thing you're going to get is, what do you mean men don't have a voice? It's a man's world. But again, that's my point. I say I don't have a voice, and then you're shouting at me that it's a man's world. So I should shut up and say, like, my opinion is stupid. You're reinforcing it. That's what it is. You're reinforcing it. I should be allowed to share my thoughts without being attacked, right? Or without you even feeling attacked. Because it's not even about you. If I say men don't have a voice, I have said nothing about women. Said nothing about, other men who feel like they have a voice, right? Maybe I've made the generalization and spoken for all men, but that's not a call to you. I've not said anything about women. I've spoken about men. So it is an internal thing. I think the solution to this is that men speak up, but only to those willing to listen. And they speak up clearly and honestly as possible and they say what they know to be true. We won't always agree with the men and the women in our lives, and that's okay. That's fine. Right? But as long as you are in pursuit of truth and not his paradoxical brother, not my truth, objective truth. As long as you're in pursuit of objective truth, you will be fine. Those thoughts matter. Sharing your opinion matters. Being able to say things as a man without the violent tone, without that pain that you're holding on to, the one you can't tell your brothers about because they will just give you a pat on the back and say, "Are you not a man?" The one you can't tell your sisters about because it's a man's world. What do you mean you have struggles? That pain, we need to find a way to positively express it without violence. Don't get me wrong, there are times for violence, right? But real men know when to sheathe their sword. They know when to be in control. I saw something once that the powerful person is the gardener who is also a samurai because he has the capacity to be able to grow plants and nourish and bring to life. But if he needs to fight, he can. Those are the type of men we need, man. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to start a gender war here, right? I think a truly optimized society is one that harnesses the vast potential of both of the sexes. And I think any rational thinking individual would come to the same conclusion. You have to give equal opportunity to both men and women. But for that to also happen, and for us to live in a society that actually aims to improve us as individuals, we have to reckon with the fact that there is suffering that we will never be able to understand because of our gender. And credence must be given to that gap, that difference in gender. And because of that difference, we should allow women to say and speak about their experiences without being attacked as men or feeling attacked as men. Because the difference exists. And so you have to account for that. That there's something they're seeing that we aren't seeing. But the same standard has to be applied for men as well, applied to men as well. Where it is, it should not, where it is, it's like a situation where it should not be far fetched for me to say something like men don't have a voice. Because the data is clear. The data is clear. We see it every single day. The fact that 80% of the suicides are men. The fact that 70% of the people who are currently depressed globally are men. So even if men can't speak for themselves, the data is talking loud and clear. So me saying men don't have a voice shouldn't trigger anybody. It's not about you. Respectfully speaking. It has nothing to do with you. I'm just saying what a lot of men feel, what a lot of men are scared to say, because they don't want that reaction. They don't want to be reminded that they have opportunity and so they should not complain. They don't want to be reminded that the fact that it's a man's world should, by extension, magically wipe away their problems. Because it doesn't solve anything. You can also contest that it's a man's world, but I don't want to even get into all that this evening. There has to be room for sympathy. There has to be room for sympathy. And maybe it's a far cry is for us to get to a point where we're going to completely understand the suffering of the individual sexes, right? I'm never going to understand what it feels like to be a woman. And there are things that women go through that I will never reckon with, but I can sympathize with it. And it would be irresponsible and illogical for me to throw it off and assert there was nothing to it because I thought women in general had some advantage. It's sort of like me invalidating their suffering. It would be wrong. But it's okay for people who are upset to do the same thing to men. And I can promise you, those men who actually did commit suicide, vast majority of them tried to speak, they were just shut down, either by other men or by women who told them it's a man's world. How can you tell me you feel like that? You have some advantages just being a man. It's like saying you have some advantages just being white. You know, the person is from a poor family because you're white. And then again, we're getting into race, but it's the same thing. Everyone's life is different. Everyone's experience is different. And when someone comes out and says, I'm suffering, right? And I don't think a lot of men complain about this. But when the data even speaks up and says 80% of the men, 80% of the suicides in the world were men that had gotten to the point where they thought it's better they end their lives. I mean, come on. There has to be a problem. There has to be a problem. There has to be a problem that we just haven't reckoned with. It has to be that they can't speak. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to speak up for them. Because it's an issue. Mothers losing sons, siblings losing brothers. And this is again, and there's someone that is watching this right now who's getting pissed and saying, what about the women that commit suicide? That's an issue too. So calm down. People shouldn't afford to die. We shouldn't get to the point where people actually die. That's the point I'm trying to make. And we can simplify that. We can make the road easier if we just show a little sympathy. And so I'm going to get a lot of hate because I'm going to try and speak for men, and that's okay. But it's the first step. Because for me, things can't go on like this. So yeah. This is how I want to end this episode. On a very solemn note. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to tell someone about this. And leave a comment in the comment section. But throughout this week, I hope, even if you're not able to empathize, hopefully you can sympathize with someone. And even if you're not able to listen long enough to understand, you can just give them a shoulder to lean on. Because we can all do with a little kindness in our lives. Man, woman, boy, girl, everything in between. Just treat people well, man.